Welcome to the People's Power Hour. They work for you and they get the work done. Stay tuned.
What haven't you experienced with me?
I think this
You are tuned in to What a Baltimore Online Radio. Please note that the views and opinions expressed are of the host and not of Lady J Media. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Good evening. This is Ray Bly Show concerning national and local events. I'd like to tell you that in 2015, since I had a 35-year-old felony that did not in any way have anything to do with my wife, the Department of Social Services and the court and so-called family law attorneys were appointed as my wife's guardian. Since my wife was deemed a sick person because she was recovering from cancer, I was not allowed to be her guardian, and they also seized all my assets and then put her in a nursing home called Forest Haven that I could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt caused her death. I have a lady here that 4 years ago, she was charged with child abuse. Her two kids were taken away from her and sent to California to live with her sister, where there's allegations that her sister is abusing these kids. And the funny thing about it, what I've learned over the years about the Department of Social Services nationwide, which is called many names, that the children have an 80% chance of being abused in the foster care system more than leaving them at home once social services get involved in the home and starts watching the abuser. The abuse usually stops immediately. But they put them in foster care. It's all about money, and they don't really love the kids like mothers and fathers do that want a better life for their kids than they had. I'd like to introduce you. Please tell them your name.
Samaya Walla.
And what happened to you 4 years ago?
Well, it's kind of hard still. I have butterflies in my stomach and just like a sick feeling in my stomach whenever I think back to when all this started. Um, and I don't think anybody should have to live with this, including the children, because they suffer the most because they really don't know what's going on. So,
How old were your children at the time?
2.5 and just past 1.
And were you living in a nice townhome
Yeah.
that you were renting?
Yeah. We blend in with the neighbors. Yeah. Nothing.
And you were homeschooling them before they actually had to go to school to give them a head start
Yeah.
in life.
Yeah. So I was homeschooled and I really valued education. So I wanted my kids to value education too.
And what happened concerning the Department of Social Services, Child Protective Agency, and the police?
Well, from what I had read in the Maryland state law, they weren't supposed to do what they did. They kind of just barged in as if they had a right to come in. And I think it was more a matter of just a matter of discretion, like parental discretion. Like it's just a way of raising your kids, whether you're swaddling or whether you're giving your kids a different diet than what most people do. Everything was still healthy and still normal. Our kids were developing well. They were still going to their doctor and everything was great.
Swaddling is when your kids are laying down for a nap, that you encompass them in like a harness to keep them from rolling over and having sudden death syndrome, which has been approved by uh, children's doctors and the medical community as safe and effective to stop sudden death by the child rolling over and suffocating or something. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
And that's what you were charged with, and criminally for child abuse
Yeah.
as an excuse to take your kids away.
Yeah.
Did you have a trial on that?
Yep. Last year it finally concluded. It kept getting postponed because of COVID, and I was found not guilty.
And did you attend psychological counseling individually plus group? Did you go to parenting classes and complete all the stuff that social services had required you over 2 years ago too to get your children back?
Yeah, actually, so since the case started in 2019, they try to give parents about a year and a half to complete all the court orders, but we actually completed it pretty quickly. So I was done by about November, and I did courses way more than I was required to do. So, like, for example, if you're going through a victim of a domestic violence class, they can say, oh, it's like 26 weeks or 32 weeks. Well, the court order doesn't specify how many times you need to go. So technically, after you've gone a few times, you've completed the court order in that regard. So I had, by about June, so this started in January. So I had already started all the classes.
Of what year? 2019?
Yeah, 2019. So my attorney had told me what was likely going to be on the court order and to get started on the classes early. So I did start in January. So by the time the court order came out in June, because the hearings are so spaced out far apart and so slow, which I think that should be fixed too, these things should be expedited, because it causes a lot of stress for our kids and everybody's kids. Like they're starting to understand that this is a new normal, and that's not right because it just gives them problems to adjust.
When this all started and you were criminally charged, you were evicted as a bad tenant because they didn't want people like you renting the townhouse in this community anymore, and you became homeless. Is that correct?
Oh, actually, our landlord, I have her on video, our old landlord, saying that she was contacted by CPS and she was told about our situation because she was in the video, she was referencing to how we don't have our kids. And I was like, you're not inside our home right now. How do you know this? And of course, landlords are public information knowing who owns a certain property. So it was very easy for CPS to contact her.
So CPS became you and your husband homelessness on top of losing your kids.
Yeah.
On top of being charged with a crime and jailed.
Yeah.
And released with an ankle monitor.
Yeah.
Until you were found innocent.
Right. So the kicker is this. I was on pretrial release because I was arrested after the police charged me. So it started in January 2019. They charged me in June of 2019, coincidentally, just a couple of days before the court order started and the hearing started. So I was able to bail myself out, which was really expensive. So everybody might not be able to do that. In order to be at that hearing, to try to convince the magistrate to make her order otherwise. So I had that opportunity. Not everybody does. And then I already had printouts of my progress to give to her that day that I submitted to the court, showing that, hey, I've already made progress on your court order. So I was in a really good position to get my kids back, but then COVID happened and they kept postponing my trial. And so I think you mentioned the landlord-tenant situation. So the landlord-tenant situation kind of got postponed too because of COVID, because we did sue our landlord so that we could get back into our home, so that we could get our kids back sooner. So it was just a really big mess.
Well, where did they end up sending your kids?
So they went to Maryland first, a foster home there. And then from there, they went to San Diego, California. So at first the plan was, and here's the problem with making plans and agreements with the Department of Social Services, they're allowed to change their minds and you're giving them a blank check essentially. So when you tell them that I'm sending my kids on contingency to get them back, they take that as a blank check and say, okay, well, they're with your sister now, they're with your family now. And if your timeline is passing the federal law timeline, which I think Congress got really close to trying to suspend that law, but they didn't end up doing it. The 18 months out of 22 months that your children are allowed to be outside of the home before they start the adoption process. So they started the adoption process because my criminal trial kept getting delayed because of COVID, even though my husband and I had already completed the court order. So it was very backwards.
Another thing, when this was all going on in 2019 and 2020, did it make you lose your jobs? And besides being homeless, where to even though DSS paid for your visitation airfare to go to California and hotel expense and everything, and was also paying your sister $60,000 a year to take care of now 3 kids. She had a baby. Since this all happened last year, a few months ago. It's ridiculous. You can't work when you want to see your kids. Your husband is unable to get a full-time job because he has visitation every month where they fly him for a week or two to California with her. It's getting ridiculous. But you do have some background problems with your husband. Your husband, at the time in 2019, was on a year's probation from 2018 from a misdemeanor, I think it was. And he completed that just after they took the kids away. Is that correct, Gary?
Mine was completed late of 2019.
Oh, just before they took your kids or after? After. This lady has a court hearing that's been postponed 4 times because judges on vacation, COVID, and everything else to try to get her kids back, coming up in the beginning of October. And Jerry, please put up the sign temporarily.
Okay, there you go. A little lower.
That's the phone number.
Okay,
Yeah, her phone number. If you want to do some pro bono work, please call her.
That'd be nice.
And please help her.
I mean, I won't be unrealistic. I have tried reaching out myself, but hey, if there's anybody watching, that's great news.
Jerry, what were some of the other problems you had that was court ordered for you to go through parenting, anger management, and possible use of marijuana, drug treatment for the use of marijuana, which is all the drugs you ever used? You weren't an alcoholic, you weren't a cocaine or heroin or anything else. You just used marijuana to help you deal with your pain and stuff. This was held against you as a bad parent. But you completed all these classes over 2 years ago and satisfactorily, and was recommended, both of you, by completing all these classes by these outside organizations, that you should get your children back. And the Department of Social Services deny, postpone. What can you do as parents in America? The government has convinced everybody that they know best for what your children, how they have to live, what they have to learn, how they have to be treated. Even though statistics prove for decades now that your children are 80% more likely to be abused in foster care than leaving them at home. Why don't social services realize that? And there's so many false accusations from people that don't like you, that they come at you with 100 gun shooting without even opening their eyes to look and see what is really going on. I mean, she had a newborn baby. Luckily, her and her husband broke state law and hid in a car and went to Louisiana to have the baby. So the court couldn't seize the baby immediately at the hospital. And then they had to wait 10 days. They paid for transportation to her sister's house to have her three children be together. She was unable to breastfeed. She was unable, her and her husband, to hold the baby against her chest, to bond with the baby so the baby understands the heartbeat, the warmth of the mother and father, as the baby is still a little baby. Hasn't become a toddler yet, I don't think. It's only a few months old now. To break up families like this because our liberal government, our liberal Democrats want to think they know best for our children. And if you don't agree with what they think is best, they just snatch your kids. And the courts agree, and all of these lawyers to pretend that they're family law lawyers or liberal as hell, that don't, you pay them like she did. They paid a lawyer to help represent in the criminal case and the child custody case, that went against them in the child custody case, thinking their kids were better off. Even though the school in California put a child abuse charge against her sister's family. Her own brother out there put a charge against the sister with her children. This is another example of families in America, too. We used to take care of each other as families. We didn't just throw away our parents in nursing homes or throw away our kids in daycare. This family didn't want to do that. They wanted to raise their kids, homeschool their kids, teach them right and wrong, God-fearing children. And look what happened. What else would you like? How many times you've been, and Judge Tucker and Judge Porter is horrendous, liberal, progressive judges that no matter what they say or what they complete with flying colors, A+ is all the way in all of the programs they had to go through, that they completed all in 2 years ago, that the state is still better for their children. What do you think about this? Jerry, what would you like to say of what you've seen in court and justice system and our Department of Social Services concerning child abuse and how mistreated your family has been?
Well, it's been a really bad 4 years. The court system seems to be one-sided on this situation. The clerks, the sheriffs seem to know what goes on in the courtrooms the last 4 years. They know me by my first name, which is not good, but the thing is
that's because they don't want anybody to challenge their authority like I've done over the years.
No. My thing is with Mr. Tucker, he was in the position of power. Should have put it in front of him a couple years prior, because I think he could read through the BS, and when he did, he seen the team that he's been helping for years underwater, and has been helping me and my wife make a slip, hiccup. I'm a father who's angry. His children were kidnapped. The girls were kidnapped first. The son was kidnapped second by Mr. Tucker, after he had no jurisdiction over my boy.
That's because he was born in Louisiana, and within 10 days, the airplane allowed him to be shipped by himself to your sister to pick up at San Diego Airport, I think you said, where they live. So Judge Tucker had no authority to take custody of this child also.
Well, Mr. Tucker did point out that...
Well, I should say Judge William B. Tucker of the Howard County Circuit Judge, and even the clerks write him up on the roving room as outrageous, biased, sexist, racist, and everything else. He only has 1 star out of 5 on the rovingroom.com, where you can look up judges and post comments about them. He's an outrageous judge. He is biased, but he's so power hungry with so many powerful friends is why he became judge and sometimes administrative judge of this court, because everybody's scared to death of him. But he doesn't rule on cases according to the law, the statutes, and the Constitution, and what's best for the children and the family. Isn't it hard for you to get a job, Jerry, a full-time job, when you want to see your kids and the government's willing to pay for you to go to San Diego every month for a week or two, all expenses paid, for you to have visitation, you and your wife with your kids? How in the hell can you own a job? And if you don't have a full-time job, how can you pay rent to get a house to get your kids back? This social service department should give immediately Section 8 housing, bring their kids home. They're both hard workers, willing to get out there and work to pay their own way quickly and in the future, where they won't have to be in Section 8 too long, or if they stay there, they'll be paying the full rent of that Section 8, where Section 8 won't have to abide and get off the taxpayer's toll immediately and have their children and a family again.
That's what America needs to understand. The big tax dollars that most Americans do not realize that goes into this is just crippling. It's crippling. It just disturbs me.
And on top of it, to find out your sister, your own flesh and blood that you trusted to send your kids to get them out of foster home, because of course, DSS, Department of Social Services, Child Protective Agency, wants to put them with a relative first if they can, even if it costs $60,000 a year and tens of thousands of more dollars to fly you out there a dozen times a year in hotel and expenses, so your visitation rights are met. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I mean, to just piggyback on some of the topics you're bringing up, because there's a lot more background to our story.
Well, go ahead and tell it. I'll shut up.
No, it's okay. Out of these 4 years, a lot's been going on. So technically, the Department of Social Services only pays for our airfare, and then they only pay for our gas to go see our kids. So they don't pay for the wear and tear on our vehicle. They don't pay for a rental vehicle. They don't pay for a hotel.
And we're like 60 days in the hole before you get your reimbursement.
Right. And it takes a long time for them to reimburse you. So and they were very unrealistic at first with the price of airline tickets, because gas got so expensive. We said we can't really hold on to our bill for this gas for so long that it's taking for you to reimburse us. So it's actually cheaper to fly. So can we get the rate that you're reimbursing us for flying a little higher? And they finally did, because before it was unreasonable. It was like maybe for one person. So I guess you could call it the catch-22 in this situation is, how are we supposed to be required to have safe and stable housing when we're also expected to go see our kids in person on a regular basis?
For the courts of Howard County.
Yeah, so that doesn't make any sense. It's like they're putting a standard on us as if, we're supposed to look at the questions?
When they flash up there, what's that comment say?
Oh, I didn't see it. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't see it.
Could you read the comment to us, Lady J, because it's too small on the cell phone for our eyesight.
That might have been the caption, too.
No. The caption is a long line.
It's saying, "Hey Ray, great show."
Oh, okay. Thank you. And tell your friends and listeners I'm going to be on every Thursday if I can at 7 o'clock with a new show concerning major topics of how our government is taking our rights away, especially our family rights and our parenting rights, thinking that they know best and convincing most of the public that they do know best, when statistics show they don't know what's best for your children.
And we were just talking about that now too, like, why are there some people, before the show started, why are there some people that think the government makes no mistakes, they're always right, And then they say that, the parent who had their children taken away, well, you got to fess up. You've got to take responsibility. Well, the problem is the burden of proof is on the government to prove that we did something wrong. And
And they
this,
fail when you were acquitted of the charges.
yeah, and this is such a
It's like
kangaroo
we're in the
court.
beginning still.
Right, but this is such a kangaroo court because at first I had in writing a deal, quote unquote, so this case could get closed quicker and resolved, so less trauma is caused to our children. And then after the hearing happens where we don't contest the Senate hearing because there is a deal, then the department can say, psych, no deal. And how is that even right? That's an agreement and they can renege on their agreement. And then I tell my attorney to file exceptions, which is the equivalent to an appeal in layman terms.
And let me back up a second. You two were still trying to get part-time jobs the whole time and paid an attorney thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And you're a little bit in the rear, so he basically told you to go to hell. He's not going to help you anymore.
Yeah.
I'm a plumber if you need it in the DMV area, okay? That's how I do it, babies.
So November of 2019 is when my attorney quit because I could not afford to pay him anymore because the case went longer than the deal that he had told me he had
Money
made.
dried out, man. He
So,
rolled.
yeah. So when they reneged, I asked my attorney to file exceptions, and I learned much later after the fact that I had 5 days to do that. I asked him the day after, and he didn't do it. And a couple days went by, and I asked him if he did it. He still didn't respond to me. This was via email, so it's documented. And then the next hearing comes, and I ask him, hey, are we going to file exceptions or an appeal now? Which one do we do now? So he's just stringing me along at every hearing until he quits by not telling me that I could have literally filed those exceptions and said, hey, I do want a contested Senate hearing because you guys reneged on your deal. So
that's when a couple of months ago, your husband saw me protesting of the injustice we get in our courts in America, especially when it deals with elderly, sick people, and children. It's so unjust. Even the criminal system puts 15 to 20% of innocent people in jail because they want convictions. They don't care if the people are innocent or guilty.
Statistics.
Your husband, a month ago, called me up and says, my wife is a go-getter. She reads, she Googles the law. She's tried to do it to fight for herself. And she came over here, and I directed her where she could do the research, how to type up motions, and how to fight by helping her do the research, because I don't know much about child abuse cases or anything. But I have been fighting elder abuse case, elder taking away my wife. They killed her. And my criminal conviction of 35 years ago, I know how to do the research. And since my eyesight is bad, I directed her to do Google searches, Westlaw searches, and other searches. And then I brought up examples of how she should format legal terms. I just helped her serve 8 out of 9 subpoenas today with requests for admissions to make all these places that social service made her go and her husband go, that they completed it with flying colors, that they should have their kids back. And to force them to answer requests for admissions, to admit that this is all true. And another thing is the court is listening to hearsay, where a social worker or a police officer in California keeps calling the social worker here and calling them bad when they go see them, causing conflict and stuff. But that's hearsay. Why don't they put it under oath and overnighted by FedEx here, a signed, sworn statement that can be used in court? And under, I think it's the 4th Amendment or the 5th Amendment, it could be the 14th, you have the right in court to confront your accuser. They're using hearsay, first off, and there's no right of this family to confront this accuser in California um, to settle anything. Is this true, what I just said?
Well, as far as I've been trying to find ways to hold the social worker accountable, I'm kind of reaching dead ends in California because I'm definitely not aware of California law. And it seems like Judge Tucker here just wants to pick and choose which hearsay he allows and which he doesn't. So he always allows the department's hearsay, but he doesn't allow ours. So that's been a big issue, and that's why it
Well,
was
you're not hearsay. You
right.
lived through it, and you got the facts, and
That's
you.
just the terminology he likes to bust out with.
The hearsay that is actually you're helping me with is filing these subpoenas. So
She
instead
did
of
not know how to file a subpoena
Well,
to
yeah.
force them to turn over the
so,
records that they completed these courses and classes and group meetings and psychological evaluations.
Right.
All that was court ordered by the Department of Social Services with flying colors. There's nothing wrong with them. They should have their kids back, but they're afraid to go to court and state this. So I showed her how to do subpoenas and then do discovery of them attached to the subpoenas. By her Googling and stuff, because I didn't remember how to file a subpoena. It's been 20 years since I filed the last one, and they changed the rules to update the rules. She went to court, got the forms and everything, and the clerk of the court helped her fill it out. More so, I just told her how to get it. It was a whole new form from what I filled out in the past.
Can I say something to your viewers? Today, while Mr. Bly was doing his thing at the courthouse, helping me and my wife, my attorney, one of the original players from 2019, quit today, put charges against me as a peace order, saying I was belligerent because I keep telling her that she didn't work for me, that she worked for Judge Tucker, and the ring that's going on. She got tired of it. Before we jetted out to California a couple of weeks ago, we put these subpoena orders in and filed them, so they knew what we were up to by the time we landed the other day here. So they were aware. So this is like a block to hurt the case even more, to hamper us to be reunified with our children legally. They're wrong. They've kidnapped my children in two different matters. But there's one thing I want to ask the viewers: don't be hasty. What is the most precious resource you can think of? Doesn't matter if you're a blue team, red team, liberal, conservative, if you're Christian, non-Christian, atheist. Hopefully, you take a minute, ponder. It is children. Without children, we wouldn't be having a show right now.
The most precious thing you could ever have in your life is your children.
We, as people of the United States and the viewers here, just start buzzing. If you can, just bring in the topic up of what people feel about CPS in your coffee bar, your beer caves, wherever you're at, sporting events, Bible studies, whatever it may be. Start getting this voice out here for American people to realize the people that we are voting in are just climbing on our children's back. If you help one of these families that are in need in your area, you can really make a factor, because that child could become an in-law of yours, So,
or in jail when they turn 18 because of foster care and the abuse and everything else has been proven mostly in foster care, not in the home. And you can call me too to get in touch with her, Jerry, if you're a lawyer that can help. I've learned that family law lawyers are one-sided. They're all liberal, and they think the judge is always right, and they don't really stand up to reunite families like they should under the law. You can call me at 410-799-3516 when the show's finished. Or you can email me at raybly, RAYBLY, at verizon.net. Or you can call
my number. That's 443-714-2843.
She needs help, and I'm not a lawyer. I have done a lot of lawsuits in my life. I've won some, I've lost a lot. especially against government officials. You can't win against the government very easily. She's committed to her children. Her husband's committed to providing support, food, and housing for her children, but they're unable to because of what happens. But he still worked part time for a couple different companies as a plumber. He's an expert plumber, but no company's going to hire him full time, give him medical care and everything else if he's got to fly to California every month to see his children.
Yeah.
You know it, and she has got the same problem going to California. How can you get a full time job, which she wants to do and he wants to do? And all you people have protested school boards about all of this propaganda pushed down our kids' throat. Keep fighting. We need to protect our children and our elderly from the state. We need to stand up and fight the state. I know I'm going to lose when I fight the state every time, but that does not stop me from contesting illegal laws, statutes, and rules. And I keep suing, spending my every penny I can come up with against them to fight them, even though I know I'm going to lose because of all their damn immunity and illegal judge rulings to protect the swamp. Now, we've had a couple comments. Jerry, how long have you been married to your wife?
Just about 7 years.
And she's the love of your life.
Yeah, she was a gift from God.
And your children are the second gift of God.
Yep. She's my second. My wife is 22 years younger than me. I asked for it for 5 years, and blam! Look what I got.
And you got away from the peer group that was causing you some legal problems, mostly misdemeanors.
Yeah, it was just, wrong crowd, wrong time. Things weren't going good. Everybody has a situation in life, but it's where our government lacks to actually help the people. That's the main problem here. Our tax dollars are going in so many different directions and not in the correct directions.
Well, when I was growing up, the government stayed out of families and communities and let the church help the people.
Absolutely.
And churches were helping people. Now most churches are all about putting a bunch more statutes up and fancy stuff, and they don't care about the community, just about their own pocketbook anymore.
Mr. Bly, you know what happened to us. I started going to a church in Montgomery County, Maryland, and I'm not going to mention names, but in Montgomery County, Maryland, this pastor that was my pastor with my new wife and my new daughter in the beginning when we first started hanging out with this guy, he has a foster care house that I did a repipe for in his home. It was polybutylene, so of course you got cheap labor because I'm a member of the church. But there was 10 kids in this foster care home here in Howard County, and they're still there today. I was a target by this church. So there are Christian people that are wolves, that are, go-getters for this institution that's just a bloodthirst. He was trying to adopt my children, stuff like that, trying to get it to set up this way. It was never about that. I just want America to know that, stay with your faith, maybe whatever it may be. But for the Muslim people that may be watching this, I just need you guys to understand something. Ramadan is a form of child neglect in the United States, and they will react on you. So I'm going to need you Muslim leaders to take wind of this and try to get in contact. Let's do this together as unity in a community. Let us raise the kids. If you got a problem down the street with a lady, she's a single mom, hating life, community. That's what I remember in the 70s. My mom was a single mother.
In the 50s and 60s.
Other women would babysit, take me to my soccer games or practices.
And the churches would come in and help with money and food.
We've lost that in America. But
the government knows best, and they don't want churches involved. They don't want to contribute to churches to help the community. And that the churches, no matter if you're Buddhist, Muslim, Sikh, Catholic, Jewish, The churches were all out there. There's only one God that says to help each other and do no harm to each other. And that's what we live by. Our World War II generation, what we're called baby boomers, to grow up with. Now it's the government knows best, and the government controls every aspect of our lives. And it is screwing up our entire culture, our ethics, our morals, our self esteem in this country, breaking up families like crazy, where welfare under Johnson decided how he could screw the poor families in the country, especially black families, is the father of children can't be living with you, or you're not allowed to food stamps, Section 8 housing, or any kind of welfare or medical assistance if the father's living with you. On purposely legislation by the Democratic Party to break up the family. And then by the 70s, when the Supreme Court ruled about abortion, guess what? They opened abortion clinics in all the poor inner city communities nationwide, mainly to convince poor people to have abortions, to not only destroy all colors of people, but mainly black poor people who live in the inner cities, destroy their families, kill their children. When are we going to change the system? When are we going to help people like Jerry and his wife that
And
complete
you out there that's listening.
and complete everything that was required by the court and social services on them over 2 years ago? And now they're told their kids are going to be put up for adoption instead of coming back home.
Right. So that federal law, it says that if 18 months out of the last 22 months your children have not been in your care, then they have to start the adoption process. The intent was so that children don't languish in foster care, but the ugly side of it is that that is not as much the issue now. Now we waste time on battling court hearing after court hearing so that our kids do not get adopted out instead of just closing the case. We already did everything. So what Ray helped with today was me learning how to show the court again that I completed the court order, because in 2019 in November, I literally handed over and I said on the record to the magistrate, here are all my documents from all the classes that I went to for your court order for every single part of it. And they scanned it into their scanners. It's in their system. And then my attorney, old attorney, had copies. I sent the copies to my newer attorney, my public defender now. And my public defender at the most recent hearing says this was before my time. I can't speak for that time, whether she has or hasn't completed the court order. That's not proper representation. The goal of this public defender is to reunite me with my children.
We have a new person attending the show. You're welcome, caller.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Ray, I wanted to read your comments. Jamal is asking, he said he came in late. What is the position with the courts? Do they have a social worker? Does the mother have housing? And what state are the children in?
The children are in California, and temporarily, since they cannot hold a full-time job by flying to California all the time, courtesy of our taxpayer money, instead of having the children here, which would save tens of thousands of dollars a year, they can't. They both working as many hours as they can, but they cannot get full permanent jobs when they cannot be permanent because they care about their kids so much. They want the visitation, but it's all the way from one coast to the other coast to see them.
And here's the thing, it's really heartbreaking for us to have to break it to our kids almost every month that we have to prepare you guys for understanding that we are going to be leaving next week. You're not going to see us next week. They just keep asking why. They don't want to leave. And we always have to tell them, we're not the ones leaving. Your auntie and your uncle are taking you guys out of the visit now. The visits could be more frequent. They could be longer. But we've been sitting at the same amount, 2 hours, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week for the last roughly 4 years. And it's supposed to change every 6 months. So I think the other question was if we have stable housing. I actually told the court since the first date until November of 2019, for a fact, I had housing with my oldest brother in San Diego in case we could not get any other stable housing here in Maryland while the landlord-tenant situation was going on. So we've always had safe and stable housing. My brother already testified to this. It's like bulletproof evidence for that. So, but the department still tries to say that we don't value safe and stable housing. And no, we are trying to save money for our kids. So why would we waste money in this crazy time where rents are crazy expensive right now and pay for rent when my brother can house us until all of this is closed out? We can actually hold regular jobs again instead of flying back and forth every month where we can't have a full-time job, and then we can have our own place. Like, we need to put matters first where, like, it's a foundational matter. But what was the caller's other questions? I think we answered 2 so far.
Lady J,
What state are the children in?
California, but it was Maryland.
But Maryland, they tried to go to the court in California, and they said they have no jurisdiction because the kids, even though they're living in California, comes under Judge Tucker in Maryland's jurisdiction, and he won't relinquish it to California for any court out there to hear the case.
Was there any other question? I thought there was like another couple more.
But let me ask you another question, ma'am. Have you got any kind of food stamps, welfare, medical assistance, or anything else since you have basically become homeless, sleeping in your car sometimes and sleeping in shelters sometimes with your husband so you can take a shower and a bath? You paid for your own meals. You paid for your own car insurance. You paid for your own cell phone. You paid for food. You didn't ask for government handouts this whole time, even though you cannot hold a full-time job. You're still trying to do it yourself.
Right.
Read that.
Oh no, that's not good.
Yeah, that's a comment on top.
I don't think so.
What's that comment say, Lady J? Lady J, you just put a comment across the
No,
top.
you don't have any more comments, right? Hold on, you might have a caller. Hold on. You have about 5 minutes left.
We got 5 minutes left.
You're live, Jamal. Did you have a question? You're live.
I need to tell him something. I'm trying to come on that show.
Oh, he has
I got custody of 4 of my kids.
He can hear you. Say it. Go ahead and say it. They can hear you.
Say it again. Sorry, it's kind of quiet.
We're kind of having trouble hearing it, Jamal.
Okay, go ahead, Jamal.
Hello, how y'all doing this evening?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Okay, what is your disposition with the courts?
Oh, that was the other one. Okay, so for the longest time, the court was saying reunification was the plan. But then March of last year, they said that they were switching to adoption because my jury trial was taking so long, and they were lying about the court order not having been completed. So that's why Ray helping out with the subpoenas helped, because the places that I went to that I completed the court order at, they're on my side. They think that I should have had my kids like only a few days after they were taken, immediately given back. So they are actually going to help with this subpoena process. So the department cannot try to interpret what the sources of information are saying. So the sources are actually going to say, this is true, and this is true. So it's not gray area anymore on what the facts are of the court order being completed.
What is the disposition with the courts? What is the disposition?
So this is the disposition. So March of last year, they wanted to do adoption. Then we filed exceptions. Then the same Judge Tucker has been holding the same hearing every 3 or 4 months for only 3 hours at a time, even though he knows, and we've said we have so much evidence to show that you should have blocked out a whole day and a second day back to back of court hearings so that this one hearing could be resolved instead of going on since March of last year. So
Hey, you're not hearing me. I need to come on this show.
All right.
I gotta tell them something that's not working. This ain't working.
All right, you can talk to them after the show. They can ready to go off in a few minutes. I'll
Okay.
connect you.
I don't know how I'm gonna talk to them.
Hold on.
Okay.
I have an extra bed here on my second floor of the other house, and I'm going to let them stay here to help them get back on their feet instead of sleeping in shelters and in their car, where they actually have an address to get employment better and maybe help from social services to get a Section 8 house temporarily when they get their kids back. They got plenty of furniture, plenty of household equipment and storage waiting for this.
Yeah, and that's the sad part because ever since that wrongful eviction happened, we have kept our kids' stuff. And the way that I bought stuff for my kids, it was like for several years in advance. So everything is still relevant that we have for them. So we're ready to pick back up immediately. We have everything that they
But
need.
this same judge has been holding that wrongful eviction money we were awarded in district court for 2.5 years now, won't get it released so we can move forward because that's a dangerous situation, that a big sum.
Yeah.
America,
Because of
there's a
COVID.
28-minute video that we've had for 4 years to show the abusive
Yeah.
power of Howard County, the police department, and CPS
We-
right here located
so-
in Columbia, Maryland.
So we have.
Stupid. Just
We also
stupid.
have about a 28-minute video, like he was saying, of the social workers coming inside the home. And how can they say after 28 minutes that it's an emergency situation to take our kids out of the home? That's what boggles our minds because it should have been within the first 3 or 4 minutes. It took them about 2 minutes to get inside the home because I was actually following Maryland state law where it said that if they had been refused the first time, then they would be allowed to come in. So I never refused them a first time. They just came in the first time. So that didn't make any sense. I had a motion to suppress. The judge was on the fence about whether to suppress the evidence or not. And that was because of the state law's wording and because of the Fourth Amendment ruling. When he did some research, called a recess, and then came back, he said that he saw that the states and the circuits are split on whether you can come in for what is it called? Community caretaking inside a home without a warrant. And then the Supreme Court, just a few days after my trial ended, the Supreme Court ruled that you cannot treat a house like a vehicle, like a Terry search. You cannot go inside the home like you can go inside of a car without a warrant.
Jamal, if you're still on listening, thank you for being on my show. I love listening to your show too and being on your show off and on. Call her or call me. Her phone number again, if you know any people pro bono or will accept just a little bit of money, please call 443-714.
2843.
My mind isn't as quick as it used to be when I was young. And this has been a great show. Please share this video to everybody you know, regardless of if they have their family together or it's been broken up by the system. To spread the word, we need to stand up and take back our rights of family values and how we want to raise our kids. As long as we don't raise them as criminals, of course, and we don't neglect them, or we don't really break their arms or legs or leave black and blue marks, as long as we discipline them without physically or mentally hurting them too much. We need discipline. We need morals and ethics instilled in them. And we need to bring back God to our country, no matter what the name of your God is. God is for helping each other survive this life, to pay us on to be with God when we die by doing good and not hurting anybody that we wouldn't want to be hurt by. Thank you very much for joining in the show. As I said, please share it, and please, Jamal, give me a call or give her a call. Thank you, Lady J, for having us. I'll see you next Thursday with maybe a new topic or maybe the same topic, depending on how all these subpoenas and motions. I've taught her how to Google and search and the Maryland rules involving all of this stuff. I have the rules books. They're getting a few years old now, but they're still current. So she can look up stuff on how to fight her own case. She is a great fighter. She's very intelligent. She's very educated, and she's wants her children home. They should have been home 2 years ago when she was acquitted and completed everything social services said. But Judge Tucker is so much a power-hungry bastard, he should never have been appointed to the bench, and they should immediately remove him. I have put in mandamus to the CA. I've talked to the Judicial Review in Annapolis board of members of delegates and senators. Nothing is, I've even written Larry Hogan about him. He is so powerful with so much political background influence with high-level officials that everybody's scared to death of him, even all the other judges and the clerks in Howard County Court. He needs to be removed. We can't have a judge that's sexist, biased, racist, and bigotry. And one day he rules one way, the next day he rules exactly the opposite. It's just depending on how he feels or woke up that morning. You can't have a judge that way. You got to have a judge that's fair, non-biased as much as possible, and follows the rules, statutes, and the Constitution of this country, including our school teachers, our school boards, our legislative bodies. We've got to hold them accountable, especially when it comes to family. Good night, and God bless you all.
Thanks for tuning in to What Up Baltimore Online Radio.